Major funding for these broadcasts is made possible by grants from Capital One Bank and Chase Commercial Term Lending, the Witkoff Group, New York Community Bank, M&T Bank, Greenberg Traurig, Perfect Building Maintenance, Genova Burns. Additional funding is provided by grants from AKA Hotels, Corman Communities, Aerial Property Advisors, AVR Realty Company, Bank of America, Merrill Lynch, Bank Leumi USA, Briarwood Organization, CBRE, Citizens Bank, Colliers International NYC, CPEX Real Estate Services, Cushman & Wakefield, Customers Bank, DDG, Dime Savings Bank of Williamsburg, Fisher Brothers, First Nationwide Title Agency, Flushing Bank, Foley & Lardner, Friedman, Handler Real Estate Organization, HAP Investment Developers, Investors Bank, James D. Kuhn Real Estate Institute at Syracuse University, James Orphanides, Chairman USRealty.com, Kilroy Architectural Windows, New York's Window Company, Madison Realty Capital, Massey-Knackle Realty Services, Matone Group, Mercantile Commerce Bank, N.A., Meridian Capital Group, Newmark Grubb Knight Frank, Newbanks, MHP Real Estate Services, Optimum Window Manufacturing Corp., People's United Bank, Rosewood Realty Group, SJP Properties, Sterling National Bank, Sterling Risk, Stonehenge Partners, TD Bank, Terra CRG, the Continuum Company, the CUNY TV Foundation, the Moynihan Group, and these friends.
So we got yellow cars, we got green cars, we got black cars, we got all these different type of cars in New York because New York City is the taxi and car service industry leader in the world. So today, with the help of my friend Robert Familant, we've put together a group of people to talk about what's happening in this industry and also that electronic business called Lyft and Uber and so on. My guest today includes Cira Angeles, who is the spokesperson for the League of Livery-based owners, okay? Erhan Tuncel, who is an owner-driver on himself and the voice for LOMTO, the League of
Mutual Taxi Owners.
League of Mutual Taxi Owners. James Grosso, who is the Managing Director Operations for Mid-Island Car Service. And last but not least, the troublemaker, my friend Robert Familant, who is the Treasurer and CEO of Progressive Credit Union. So how many years have you been lending to the taxi business and car service business?
Progressive Credit Union has been lending money to Medallion taxi owners since the late 1950s, early 1960s.
And what have you seen, what's happening today? You know, because I think the car business and the taxi business is getting a bad rap. People don't know all the information that, there are 13,000 medallions in that number, but there are really 6,000 owners who drive the medallions. And then how many livery?
There's approximately 27,000 vehicles that are licensed and registered in the city of New York that operate as liveries. But in the for-hire industry, you also have another 25,000 approximately that are black cars and another 5,800 vehicles that work as limousines, luxury limousines in the city. So we have a very large numbers of registered vehicles in the city.
So I'm hearing, everybody thinks, there's only 13,000. I just heard right now we're talking about another 40 to 50,000.
Roughly 60,000, including the 6,000.
Right. So we have 6,000 cars out there available, but we have 8.5 million people who live in New York, and we had last year 56 million visitors to New York. So there's a need for the car services to the airports. There's needs for car services everywhere. Everybody hears about Uber. They see the ads in the newspaper or on the bus. Become a driver of Uber. Your members have had to be pushed to go to Uber? Why are they not leaving to go to this electronic-based type of system?
There's two scenarios. The industry, as a result of what it's called commonly the TNCs, or these companies that have come in and have smartphone apps, it has been a flux of new drivers. As a result of it, we've seen the increase of 83% in the black car industry. But we also see new drivers. Our drivers basically see that they're used to working with us. They're used to working in the communities, but we also up our game. We're trying to create platforms, technological platforms that will allow us to come together. We have a network right now of almost 9,000 drivers that are already incorporated with different bases, and we can dispatch on demand the same way that these TNCs have done in the city of New York. And I think we are a little bit behind because we've been servicing the New York City for several decades.
How do you promote? I mean, you're Staten Island based. You're also with FLOW, the New York Association of Fleet Owners. Now, how do you promote your business? Okay, Erhan's business is taxi drivers. Okay, these are the bread and butter of New York City. The people who've worked, who've put their kids through school, who've been hardworking people who are entrepreneurs. Okay, you have fleet owners. Okay, how do you promote fleet? I mean, I wake up early in the morning and I hear dial 7. They spend a lot of money on advertising, okay? Then there are other advertisers over there. How do you promote your business?
Unfortunately, a lot of it is an old school way of operating. A lot of the fleets tend to be family-owned businesses, very planted within community. Our car service, for example, has been in business. June is 34 years, original ownership, which not many bases could say they've been in business that long, original ownership. But we do advertising, newspapers. A lot of it's word of mouth. We try to network within the other groups we try to work with, like Cira's group. And we don't have the same financial backing that a Dial 7 would have, or definitely not what an Uber would have. I mean, I would never be able to advertise on the back of a city bus, $1,000, leave your livery base and promise the world and possibly not be able to deliver.
But we were talking before. What is a good driver, earning during a good period of time on an 8-hour or 10-hour shift, gross, before paying their expenses?
My estimation would be about $350.
And then they have to pay off their loan, which they may have to Progressive. They have to pay for the maintenance for the car, for the purchase of the car, and so on.
Our drivers do not leave our bases because we only charge, let's say, a service fee per week, $50 to $75, while Uber charges 30% of their earnings. They charge taxes, and they charge 2.5%, which goes towards the compensation. So by the end of the shift, if you make $1,000 a week, you end up with $600. My driver ends up with his full paycheck, and he only gives us $50 to $75. So, and they can do whatever they please. There's no 1099. In some cases, when we have corporate accounts, we give the 1099. So they feel that they're more free. They don't have quotas that they have to make, because I've heard from some drivers that they have quotas to make. They have certain amount of calls that they need to pick up within a certain amount of time. So we don't put that pressure on our drivers.
When people hear, a lot of the corporate business in New York has always been what we call the black car services. Now, the black car services, it's a predetermined rate. It's by a zone or a certain book price or whatever over there. But that business is being hurt also by the applications today. You find
absolutely, yes. There's discussion at the city council now to limit the, quote, surge or gouge pricing that Uber uses, and that will come back to help the black car groups, because they've been unfairly targeted by Uber with this pricing model. What they're doing is they're saying to a driver, you'll make more in less time. Well, they may make more in less time. Who's paying that? It's the population that's being exploited.
Now, I had told you prior in the green room that Friday I was in a car. I was doing a speaking engagement, and I took a Dial 7. The association that I spoke for leased the car for me to get back to Manhattan, and I spoke to this driver, a traditional guy who I believe one time was a taxi driver, who then worked. He took the bait, as someone would say, from Uber for the special money, and he said he went to work for Uber for 2 weeks in December. And he said he made more money, but he quit after 2 weeks. And his reason for quitting was, he said, people were very upset that they weren't guaranteed what the price would be. It was an open-ended situation. Even the estimate was incorrect. There was premium pricing because it was New Year's or Christmas week over there. And he said the customer, when he was with Dial, he knew that the customer was, or with a black car, he knew what the type of customer was. Here he was having a customer who had just left the holiday party. Many of them were drunk, and it wasn't worthwhile. So many drivers are not feeling happy, even though it looks like that there's much greater panacea by working for an Uber or a Lyft. In reality, it's better to be with a Livery or to be with a general car service.
One big fallout that we've seen is, and it's not just in Staten Island, it's parts of Queens and Brooklyn, drivers have gone towards that pot of gold, what that advertised potential income could be. Now, you take a base like mine, we service the community. We've been doing it for a very long time. Staten Island, as just a piece of the city, 2015 estimates, 20% of the population is age 60 or older. So you have a very large senior population. When you lose drivers, they're not leaving us to go to Uber to work in Staten Island. They're leaving us to go to Manhattan. They're going to where the money is. So what happens is we run less and less cars to service the community. And those are the people that really need it. And they're not going to pay an Uber price. We do a zone-to-zone. We do a flat rate. Doesn't matter how long it takes. We don't have a metered rate. So people know when they get in the car that from point A to point B, it could be $8, $10, $12, $30 to the airport, whatever it is.
Now, that's a very good point, because what's happening out there with this surge pricing and Uber's lure of drivers for that pot of gold is actually let's say the taxi service, right? The car service, the vehicle service that people want in Manhattan is increasing, and they're all going. Uber is not acting as a prearranged, like they're supposed to, like any other black car base. They're actually providing on-demand service, and Uber. I never heard Uber say that, but Lyft comes out and says that they're providing on-demand service, which is technically what
you're supposed to be. That's what you're licensed to.
We are small businessmen,
right,
who's losing that privilege that we paid for, that exclusive privilege of picking up street hails.
James brought up an interesting thing. The aging population in Staten Island who uses the Mid-Island car services there. The guys who I work with, and Robert knows them, they don't take taxis anymore. The millenniums are oriented to the Uber and the Lyft. It's a question of the geographic and the economic situation. That the millenniums, who, let's say, the 20 to 40 years of age, they're in a category that they say, you know what, I got a credit card, it's on there, I know what it is, and they don't look at the bill. Am I correct?
They're technology oriented, and certainly the yellow industry and the livery industry in New York, we were caught a little sleeping with this technology wave, and we're catching up now. And when those millenniums are given the choice between an app for a yellow or a green cab at a rate that they know is stated and published, with a driver that they know has been drug tested and has been licensed, versus an Uber.
Thank God, because otherwise you couldn't get
Right. So when they have that option, I think many of those people who have gone to the Uber or the Lyft for the instant gratification of their cell phone will come back to the services that they previously supported.
Not only that, I think to add to your point, I think also when the millenniums and anybody in our community, seniors and young people alike, realize that you can get a green cap or a yellow cap, which is regulated with no dynamic pricing or surcharge, as they want to call it, of an average of less than 7%. You're talking about the deliveries in the black cars have an average. In the worst case scenario, the most expensive that you could pay under the circumstances, and you're talking about 23 to 25%. And you are talking about, because of the convenience of having a credit card or having a smartphone app, 900% surcharge. There's going to come a point that our community in general, New Yorkers are not stupid. There's going to come a point that New Yorkers are going to realize that instead of me spending $500 on a ride, I could have spent $100 and get to the same point in the same or safer way. So I think
I believe it's an age situation. A lot of the Uber is gear.
Oh, definitely.
Absolutely.
Okay. So let's go to the economics over there. How much has the value of a Medallion gone down?
The yellow Medallion mini fleets have gone down about 23%, and individual Medallions have probably gone down about the same from their highest.
Now explain to my audience what a mini fleet is.
A mini fleet is 2 Medallions, generally owned in an LLC or a corporation, and usually operated out of a fleet garage as opposed to an owner-operator driving that.
And they pay a driver; he gets paid.
And a driver leases that vehicle for a day, a week.
So you're saying it's a 25% reduction on the
yes, from the height of the market,
and on the individual
about the same. And what I would say, but there are very few transfers, and I think the reason there are so few transfers is. And there were always very few transfers. People aren't selling their Medallions because they're income-producing assets.
It's an asset, and it's an earnings.
Right.
As you said before, this is how you've sent your kids to college. This is how you supported a family. It's been a good living.
It's an immigrant's American dream is what it is, okay?
So before, it was selling for a premium over its income stream because there was a lack of demand. Today, it's selling for less than its income stream because people are a little afraid. But the income stream is certain, and that's why it's a valuable asset.
So here's my big question. What are these green? Okay, all of a sudden the green, due to you were very involved with it, the greens came around because they were north of 96th Street or the outer boroughs, and I see them especially, all around. So how much is it to own a green car?
Right now it's $3,000 to purchase the permit. It used to be in the first issuance $1,500. To hack up the car and everything else, you put another $3,000, and yet you can continue doing what you were doing before, which is pre-arranging through your base, and you can also pick up in the neighborhoods of New York City.
Now, but if that car goes south of 96th Street, can they pick up, or
they cannot pick up?
The meter won't work?
It will not work. It will automatically
so it's
shut
adjusted
off
over there.
Right, and same goes
So
for...
why wouldn't somebody, and I'm just trying to understand, the immigrant's way of life. I'm here, I can go in and I can buy this opportunity for $3,000 is what you said. Okay, and I'm an entrepreneur for $3,000, and then I could work for Mid-Island or Flow, or I can work for you, your Riverside, the other situation, your fleet association. Why should I be spending $750,000 for Medallion?
Well, you have to remember something. You have to do one thing that's not being mentioned is the SHL, which are the greens, are $3,000 for 3 years. So it's a 3-year license. Okay, that has to be renewed at the end of 3 years.
So it's not a lifetime. So
No,
you're
it's
not
not.
buying an asset. You're buying a 3-year.
Correct. You're buying a license is what
The
you
yellow Medallion owner has the exclusive right of street hail in New York. And now it's being determined that street hail and e-hail may in fact be the same. And they should be the only ones who are allowed to have access to that.
E-hail
But let me just go back to the non-renewal. You can actually sell the permit, so it's an asset, because you can transfer it at any time. You can make money and you can sell it for a higher number. We have numbers that people have sold their permits at $10,000 and $17,000 when there was
a better market.
When there was understanding that the second issuance was not going to happen.
How many were allowed in the first issuance?
6,000. Right now we have, the TLC have sold 8,000. There's only 7,000 on the road. The other ones have a certain amount of time to hack up and start working. So I do hear what you say, that we have to renew. Yes, we have to renew, but we have the ability to sell and to create value.
So if I'm a livery driver, okay, I own my own livery, okay, as opposed to being like you own cars yourself, wouldn't it be beneficial that I take my former car, which was on the black day night, or a lot of the independent car services, and make it a green, so I can be hailing customers walking in off the street in the outer boroughs?
For many people, that makes sense. For other people, they're used to work at a different pace with the base. They used to work with personal passengers that they have done for several decades. They don't want to change the model.
So they can't put the sign off duty on it?
They can't.
Well, it also depends
they
on the
can do that, but
geographic
yes,
area.
the truth is that, in our industry, I think everybody, we have different segments, and a lot of our drivers have gotten used to be doing certain things. And the people that we saw that were willing to make the change were the people who more frequently in certain areas of Manhattan were doing street hails. And not everybody had the ability to pay $1 million for it, nor are you going to be able to make the same money that the yellows make.
So here is the big question. Technology is here today. There is no question. Millenniums are driving the economy, not only here, around the world, okay, all these other cities. And for good, bad, or indifferent, we are going to have these application car services around. How is the taxi and the livery business, what are they doing to make sure that the owner-driver still has an income from the business, that they don't lose so much business to the Lyft, to the Ubers and other people, because they have lots of venture capital behind their money?
Well, step one is there has to be the same or certainly similar regulations for all of the different aspects of the transportation industry. The Lyfts and the Ubers came in like gangbusters, without proper insurance, without vehicle inspection, without vetting drivers. It's easy to make money when you're not following any of the rules. If you're not contributing 50 cents a ride to the MTA, it's very easy. So those parameters have to change, and they will change.
Okay, I'm Big Bad Uber. I'll give you the 50 cents. It's like the hotels. I mean, hotels are very upset that Airbnb is in business. But if I go to certain places, all I see is Airbnb. So Airbnb says, fine, we'll collect the 18.5%. So Uber says, now I'll give you the 50 cents a ride.
When all is said and done, I believe that and apps in yellow cabs, I believe that driving a yellow cab will be more attractive to the driver than driving Uber. Ownership has always been more attractive than non-ownership. And the Medallion values will remain at their current level or become slightly higher once again because demand will increase.
I want to piggyback on that. The regulation scheme is huge. New York is the only market in which Uber operates that they have to use regulated vehicles. And even now we see our partners right over the water, New Jersey, is trying to pass regulations to reel Uber in, because Uber operates in areas like New Jersey with regular passenger vehicles, non-commercial insurance, non-commercial licenses, and it has an impact on New York. How does that happen? Well, we just battled with our state senator, Senator Lanza, with the city councilman, Steve Matteo, the TLC, in Newark, New Jersey, in Newark Airport. Terminal A is in Elizabeth, Terminal B and C are in Newark. Terminal A, we were getting fines of over $500 for picking up regular prearranged customers, because there's a law on their books going back, I think, to the late 90s that you cannot pick up from Terminal A unless you're licensed as a taxi in Elizabeth, which we're not. Did some prying, found out that a big chunk of the problem was because Uber had such a large presence and was building. I think now they're at a little over 5,100 drivers in New Jersey, and they predict up to 10,000 by 2016. They were blending in with the sea of family and friends picking up. So our cars that are marked based on TLC regulation were easy pickings. So we were getting summonsed. Now, thankfully, with the help of the TLC, we've been able to get a stay. But what was happening is our customers in Staten Island, because we were right near Newark Airport, they were being forced to take taxi cabs. Or we had to run the risk of getting summoned, or we had to have our customers move to Terminal B and try to pick them up in a different terminal, which was insane.
So how do you, in the league, see, what are they doing? What's the thoughts of the league with regard to the electronic services? How are you going to...
Well, we are...
you got to live with them, so we have to figure out certain...
Yeah, the taxi industry is in the process of creating an app that people will be able to use to summons a taxi. So...
so you'll be able to summons a taxi, and then it'll be based on the meter, correct?
Yes, it'll be based on the meter. So what New York City transportation industry was built on rules and regulations, right? And these rules and regulations did not come about overnight. These are decades of regulatory and industry stakeholders working together to create the best transportation industry in the world, literally. And that includes the yellow taxis, the liveries, the black cars, community car services. And we've been working together for years in order to provide that service, regulated service to people. In yellow taxis and now the SHLs, it's a meter, it's a reliable, safe, and metered taxi service.
Yeah, and I think one of the, living in New York my entire life, I remember when you couldn't go in a taxi cab and pay by a credit card. The credit card has been an innovation. I think it's increased perhaps the driver's income. It also helped the consumer having the ability of paying, I'm going to the airport, it's $55 or something like that, swiping their card. So in a taxi.
To follow up on that, Michael, there's a perfect example of government allowing technology and innovation to come into the industry and at the same time still be able to protect the consumer, because it's the government who allowed that technology to come into taxis to provide the credit card option. But in the process, they didn't throw away the rules and regulations just the sake of credit card usage.
But, I'm going to knock the liveries. The liveries for many years, even though their taxis took credit cards, the liveries were never proactive for the credit cards.
We were not proactive, but I do believe that with the incorporation of technology, I think technology has brought in a wake-up call, so to speak, to all of us. We have united cohesively in the city and the state to protect the consumer, to protect our drivers, to protect the businesses that we created in New York City, immigrant businesses, and I think at the end of the day, everybody wants to protect those jobs. But also, we continue to move forward, incorporating that same technology into our bases to help our drivers.
Another item which is becoming big is the ride sharing. Do you see the ride sharing increasing in New York? Because, Uber even came for ride sharing, Vias, and do you see that happening?
And Lyft.
I see it on very limited. The same millenniums that you're talking about, I don't think they're interested in ride sharing. There have been ride sharing programs that the Taxi Limousine Commission has put into effect on trial basis and does work in some locations. 79th Street by the East Side, there was always ride sharing there. I don't see that, but it's certainly another part of transportation.
I think what we've given to my viewers and to myself is a much better understanding of what's happening in the taxi, delivery, car service business, and in the electronic business. And I think in summation, you have to be proactive, have this application, has to be for the deliveries, has to be for the owners, it has to be there. And you know what? Finance will be around. Robert will continue to be financing car services, and other people will be in this type of business. But we're here. We're in a technology stage, and things will be continuing on. I'd like to thank Cira, Erhan, James, and Robert. See you next week. And also, remember, I have apps. You can find us on Twitter, Facebook, LinkedIn. See you next week.